What's going on, everyone? Scott here from the Breakevens, giving you another team review today. We're up to the Mighty Pies. We've already done Adelaide, Brisbane, and Carlton. If you haven't seen those, go check them out. The Pies, my team, not super coach relevant, let's be honest. A lot of changes. So, and not a whole lot of news, which is annoying. So, before we get into the podcast, though, or the video, my apologies. Don't forget you can find me on social media at Breakevens Pod on X, on Facebook, The Breakevens, and here on YouTube, The Breakevens. Like, follow, and subscribe to all those together for all AFL Supercoach content, and of course, FPL, BBL, NBL, NBA, and the NFL one's finished. So, yeah, all the fantasy stuff. That's me. So, Pies. We finished ninth in 2024. Was not a great year, especially after winning the premiership, but it's just a Collingwood thing to do, really, isn't it? Win the premiership, not make finals next season. Let's go through the ins and outs. So the ins, Joel Cochran was pick 47. Will Hayes was pick 56. Dan Houston was traded from Port Adelaide. Tim Membry was delisted. We picked him up as a free agent. Obviously, used to play at the Saints. Harry Perriman was a free agent that we got from GWS. And Charlie West was pick 50. So you look there, we went after Houston, big one. We've got Perryman, which is a big booster, and Tim Membry as well. Our eight, Aiden Begg was delisted. Jack Bytel was delisted. Josh Carmichael retired. Josh Eyre was delisted. Nathan Kruger was delisted. Nathan Murphy retired. John Noble was traded to Gold Coast, and Joey Richard was traded to Port Adelaide. So you look at that. Murphy, big one. Noble, big one. Richards was looking like a good young player. Kruger would have got more games if he didn't get injured, you'd feel. Bytel played a bit last season, and Carmichael was a bit in and out. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. That is for sure, but we had a couple big ins, which is huge. So let's get through the preseason news. Tom Mitchell is his Achilles is ongoing, and we don't know when he will be back. This is good for the younger guys. Ed Allen, speaking about younger guys, is favoured to take Tom Mitchell's role at the moment. He's looking good. He's looking strong. Could be a bit of a breakout year for Ed Allen and could keep Mitchell out of the side. Harry Perriman is looking great off the halfback. I think he gets a bit of mid-time as well, but we know he's a great scorer when given the chance. So really, really looking forward to him. Dan Houston, again, he's another one who's looking great off the halfback as well. But as we know, he misses the first, is it 1 or 2 rounds that he's suspended for? He misses early anyway. And another one is Reef McInnes in defense. Looks to be trying out for taking Nathan Murphy's role. So he's cheap. He's looking good. We've seen it before. Tall, big body forwards that are struggling a little bit up forward. They go behind the ball. They know how to read the ball early off the boot. They tend to find a home down there, a bit like Darcy Moore. But it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Let's go to the Supercoach selection. So we'll go through the primos. You've got Dan Houston, 575k defender, misses games due to suspension, so you're not selecting him. Probably look to pick him up after Collingwood's bye, which is in round 3, but we'll get to that soon. Next is Nick Dacos, 631k mid, has the early bye. It's a tough bye, but last year he kicked off early. You're probably going to get him a little bit cheaper. He's obviously going to get more attention because he dominated last season playing basically full-time mid. But you know what you're going to get with him. You're going to get big scores and a very high floor as well. So there was a stat that super coaches who didn't start with Nick Dacos at the start of last season scored better in the earlier rounds. So obviously that big chunk of cash they were able to distribute everywhere. Where those like myself started a bit slower because we had Dacos. So just an interesting fact there. Another one who is someone who I'm looking at currently is Darcy Cameron, 566k ruck. I do have here when I wrote this better, cheaper options, but my sort of thinking is we got Tim Membry. You can't play Cameron, Membry, Cox. We did have McInnes down there. There's someone else who I'm probably missing. Maya check. You know, you can't go too tall. So have they brought Membry in? You know, he'll be the full forward. Then he'll pinch hit in the ruck potentially. If that is the case, that means more minutes for Darcy Cameron. And we saw at the end of last season, I believe Cox was out for a little bit. He actually scored quite well, over 100. If we have, you know, people looking at Tom DeConning, who's around the same price, go Darcy Cameron. There's no Mark Pitternet there. There could be a big Mason Cox there, but just something to think about. Someone who I'm looking at keeping an eye on. So I don't think he's a bad selection at all, unless they stick with Cox and then they do the 50-50 split. Mid-price and value option, I've only got Harry Perriman there, 417k defender. What's his role going to be? Is it halfback? Is it mid? Is it both? I think it'll be full-time mid. Well, not full-time, but majority mid. And he'll go off that halfback, especially probably early if Houston's out. We lost Noble, so he might play off the halfback. I'm going to wait and see after the Collingwood bye if he's worth selecting. I don't think he will be, in my opinion. You want him to go 105. Can he do that? There's a world where he probably can. But keep an eye on him. He'll be playing halfback or mid. So we know they're good roles. We know he can score well. He did it at GWS when he got the chance. So keep an eye, but I'm not super confident in starting him. And we move to the rookies. I've put Jacob Ryan here, 119k defender. He's looked to have put on a bit of size. With Noble going out, we need someone to fill that role. Then Houston's out early. If Jacob Ryan, you know, gets a gig early, does really well, you can't really drop him, can you? Well, I mean, you can, but if you've got a young kid there who's worked his ass off and he's performing well, you've got to sort of give him a chance. So is he best 22? Probably not. Is he a sub risk when he plays? Yes, but I don't think he's a starting sub. I think he's someone who starts and then gets subbed later if he's having a quiet one, if that makes sense. So just keep an eye on him. I touched on Ed Allen, 194k mid. What's his role going to be? Is he taking Tom Mitchell's role? That when Tom Mitchell comes back, what happens? Again, what I said with Ryan, if Allen is performing, you can't really drop him, especially for an older guy like Mitchell, who's come off injury after injury and is slow. You want that young guy who's, you know, explosive. He's strong. He's been working on his core strength. Definitely someone to look at early on. Is he a sub risk? I think if he starts, he's not. But he definitely could be subbed out. So he's definitely not a starting sub, if that makes sense. So, and the other one was Reece McInnes, 200K forward. As I said, halfback role. Does he take that? Who else do we have back there? If Perriman plays in defence, but you don't really want him on a key forward, do you? You got Houston when he plays. It's definitely an interesting one, McInnes. I'd probably have him just out of the 22. And we saw last season he was the super sub. He'd come in for the last quarter and kick like 4-5 goals. So yeah, keep an eye on all those three rookies. I think Allen is probably the best. And then McInnes there, depending on his role. If it's halfback, you look at him. If it's forward, you stay away. All right, so the buys. So Collingwood have the round 3 buy, which they share with Brisbane, Geelong, and Sydney. Not a great buy there. And then round 14, they share with the Suns, the Swans, and the Tigers. So probably the easiest of the mid-season buys that isn't St Kilda and Freo, because they're the only two. Obviously, you'll have Dacos, potentially Cameron and Houston. Gold Coast, depending what Rioli's doing. Do you go a Rao or an Anderson? The Swans touched on in, I believe, the Brisbane video. You got your Gordons, your Mills, your Roberts, your Grundys, your Warners in there. So look, and then you got Richmond, where you might have some rookies, but not really going primos there, are you? So it's not a bad buy in terms of things. It's not an abundant of like primos in that. So quite helpful there. Let's go through the fixtures. So they play the Giants in round 0. That is away, but as we know, round 0 does not count for Supercoach. In round 1, though, they have Port at home. It's going to be a big game. They've got the Dogs away, but they're playing at the MCG. So is it really away? Then they have the bye in round 3, the Blues in round 4 at home, the Swans away, gather round, and the Lions in round 6 away. It is a tough start, and that's why I think I might be fading Nick Dacos. In terms for Darcy Cameron, Port, you got Soldo, he could score well against. He can score well against English. Could score well against TDK. Up against Brodie Grundy could be a tougher one, and Oscar McInerney was a tough guy to come up against last season. So tough games, tough fixtures. So it is sort of pushing me away from the Pies just a little bit. But they're looking to bounce back this year. Pies for the Premiers, hopefully. And they play the Crows twice, Lions twice, the Blues twice, Freo twice, Hawks twice, and D's twice. Tough fixtures. Crows, they always match up well. There's always someone who takes a mark with like 5 seconds to go and slots it, and we lose. Lions, very tough. Blues, the big rivals. We somehow usually win those games. Freo, they're no walk in the park. Hawks, the Hawks are on an absolute charge. And the D's, they're looking to improve. So tough fixtures for the Pies. That's all I've got. I'm hoping the Pies do better this year. But realistically, you're not going to start Houston or Dacos. You take a punt on Cameron, depending on what the setup is, and then maybe Ed Allen. But you're not really looking at anyone else, are you? So not super relevant early on are the Pies, but mid come, trade season and the mid buys, it's when you might start to see some black and white seeping through. So that's going to do it for today. Don't forget, you can find me on X at Breakevens Pod, here on, not here on Facebook, the Breakevens, but here on YouTube, the Breakevens. Like, follow, and subscribe. Go check out the other videos if you have missed. There's more coming, daily uploads. Thank you again for watching and listening. And until next time, it's bye for now.